everybody, and welcome back for the continuation of Stephen King's Cell book reading. It's been a while. I know it's been over a month since I continued with the story, but I'm here today, and yeah, let's go get back into it. Where are we going? Tom asked. I was headed for the tea. He pointed to a green painted kiosk about a block ahead. A small crowd of people were miling there. Now, I'm not sure being underground is such a hot idea. Me neither, Clay said. I got a room at a place called the Atlantic Avenue Inn, about 5 blocks further up. Tom brightened. I think I know it. On London, actually, just off Atlantic. Right, let's go there. We can check the TV, and I want to call my wife. On the room phone? The room phone, check. I don't even have a cell phone. I have one, but I left it at home. It's broken. Rafe, my cat knocked it off the counter. I was meaning to buy a new one this very day, but listen, Mr. Riddle, Clay? Clay then. Are you sure the phone in your room will be safe? Clay stopped. He hadn't even considered this idea. But if the landlines weren't okay, what would be? He was about to say this to Tom when a sudden brawl broke out at the tea station up ahead. There were cries of panic, screams, and more of that wild babbling. He recognized it for what it was now. The signature scribbles of madness, a little knot of people that had been miling around the Greystone pillbox, and the steps going below ground broke up. A few of them ran into the streets, two with their arms around each other, snatching looks back over their shoulders as they went. Most ran into the park, all in different directions, which sort of broke Clay's heart. He felt better somehow about the two with their hands around each other. Still at the tea station and on their feet were 2 men and 2 women. Clay was pretty sure it was they who had emerged from the station and driven off the rest. As Clay and Tom stood watching from half a block away, these remaining 4 fell to fighting with each other. This brawl had the hysterical, killing viciousness he had already seen, but no discernible pattern. It wasn't 3 against 1 or 2 against 2, and it certainly wasn't the boys against the girls. In fact, one of the girls was a woman who looked to be in her middle 60s, with a stocky body and a no-nonsense haircut that made Clay think of several women teachers he known who were nearing retirement. They fought with feet and fists and nails and teeth, grunting and shouting, encircling the bodies of maybe half a dozen people who had already been knocked unconscious or perhaps killed. One of the men stumbled over an overstretched leg and went to his knees. The younger of the 2 women dropped on top of him. The man on his knees swept something up from the pavement at the head of the stairs. Clay saw with no surprise, however, that it was a cell phone, and slammed it into the side of the woman's face. The cell phone shattered, tearing the woman's cheek open, and showered a fresh of blood onto the shoulder of her light jacket. But her screams was of rage rather than pain. She grabbed the kneeling man's ear like a pair of jug handles, dropped her own knee against his lap, and shoved him backwards onto the gloom of the tea stairwells. They went out of sight, locked together, and thrashing like cats in heat. Come on, Tom mumbled, twitching Clay's shirt with an odd delicacy. Come on, other side of the street. Come on. Clay allowed himself to be led across Bolton Street. He assumed that either Tom McCord was watching where they were going, or he was lucky because they got to the other side okay. They stopped against in front of the Colonial Books Best of the Old, Best of the New, watching as an unlikely victor of the Tea Station battle went striding into the park in the direction of the burning plane, with blood dripping onto her collar from the ends of her zero-tolerance grey hair. Clee wasn't a bit surprised that the last one standing had turned out to be the lady who looked like the librarian or Latin teacher a year or two away from a gold watch. He had taught with his share of such ladies, and the ones who made it into that age were, more often than not, next door to indestructible. He opened his mouth to say something like this to Tom. In his mind, it sounded quite witty, and what came out was a watery crook. His vision had come over shimmery too. Apparently Tom McCord, the little man in the tweed suit, wasn't the only one having trouble with this waterwork. Clee swiped an arm across his eye, tried again to talk, and managed no more than another of those watery crooks. That's okay, Tom said. Better let it come. And so, standing there in front of the shop, window filled with old books surrounding a royal typewriter hailing from long before the era of cellular communications, Clee did. He cried for Parachute Woman, for Pixie Light and Pixie Dark, and he cried for himself, because Boston was not his home, and home had never seemed so far. Above the common, Boston Street narrowed and became so choked with cars, both those wrecked and those plain abandoned, that they no longer had to worry about kamikaze limos or rogue dock boats, which was a relief. From all around them, the city banged and crashed like New Year's Eve in hell. There was plenty of noise close by, as well as car alarms and burglar alarms mostly. But the streets itself was for the moment eerily deserted. Get undercover, Officer Ulrich, Ashland had said. You've been lucky once, you may not be lucky again. But 2 blocks east of the Colonial Books, and still a block from Clee's not quite Fleabag Hotel, they were lucky again. Another lunatic, this one a young man of perhaps 25, with muscles that looked tuned by Nautilus and Cybex, bolted from an alley just in front of them, and went dashing across the street, hurling the locked bumpers of 2 cars. Above the common, Bolston Street narrowed and became so choked with cars. Wait, this wasn't where I was. He held the car. Yeah, he held the car. Sorry about that. I lost track of where I was. He held the car aerial in each hand and stabbed them rapidly back and forth in the air like daggers as he cruised his lethal course. He was naked except for a pair of what looked like brand new Nikes with bright red swooshes. I don't know what swooshes is. Penwood grandfather clock on speed. He hit the far side walk and side-wheeled west, back towards the common, his butt clenched and unclenched in fantastic rhythm. Tom McCord clutched Clee's arm and hard until his latest lunatic was gone, then slowly relaxed his grip. If you've seen us, he began, Yeah, but he didn't, Clay said. He felt suddenly absurdly happy. He knew that the feeling would pass, but for the moment he was delighted to ride it. Felt like a man who had successfully drawn to an insane street with the biggest pot of the night lying on the table in front of him. The pity who does see, Tom said. The pity who sees him, Clay said. Come on. The doors of the Atlantic Avenue Inn were locked. Clay was so surprised that for a moment he could only stand there, trying to turn the knob, feeling it slip through his fingers, trying to get the idea through his head. Locked. The door of his hotel, locked against him. Tom stepped up beside him, leaned his forehead against the glass to cut the glare, and peered in. From the north, from Logan, surely caused another of those monstrous explosions. And this time Clay only twitched. He didn't think Tom McCourt reached at all. Tom was too absorbed in what he was seeing. That guy on the floor, he announced at last, wearing a uniform, but he really looked too old to be a bellhop. I don't want anyone to carry my fucking luggage, Clay said. I just want to go up to my room. Tom made an old little snorting sound. Clay thought maybe the little guy was starting to cry again, then realized that sound was smothered laughter. The two doors had Atlantic Avenue Inn printed on one glass panel and blatant lie, Boston's finest address, printed on the other. Tom slapped the flat of his hand and the glass of the left-hand panel between Boston's finest address and a row of credit card decals. Now Clay was peering in too. The lobby wasn't very big. On the left was the reception desk. On the right was a pair of elevators. On the floor was a turkey red rug. The old guy in the uniform lay on his face down with one foot up on the couch and a framed Courier and Eve's sealed ship print on his ass. Okay. Clay's good feeling left in a rush, and when Tom began to hammer on the glass instead of just slap, he put his hand on Tom's first fist. Don't bother, he said. They're not going to let us in, even if they're alive and sane. He thought about that and nodded, especially if they're sane. Tom looked at him wonderingly. You don't get it, do you? Well, get what? Things have changed. They can't keep us out. He pushed Clay's hand off his own, but instead of hammering, he put his forehead against the glass again and shouted. Clay thought he had a pretty good shouting voice on him for a little guy. Hey, hey, in there. A pause. In the lobby nothing changed. The old bellman went on being dead with a picture on his ass. Hey, if you're in there, you better open the door. The man I'm with is a paying guest of the hotel, and I'm his guest. Open up, or I'm going to grab a curbstone and break the glass. You hear me? A curbstone? Clay said. He started to laugh. Did you say curbstone? Jolly good. He laughed harder. He couldn't help it. That movement to his left caught his eye. He looked around and saw a teenage girl standing a little way farther up the street. She was looking at him out of haggard blue disaster victim eyes. She was wearing a white dress, and there was a vast bit of blood on the front of it. More blood was crushed between her nose, on her lips, and chin. Other than a bloody nose, she didn't look hurt. And she didn't look crazy at all. Just shocked. Shocked almost to death. Are you alright? Clay asked. He took a step forward towards her, and she took a corresponding step back. Under the circumstance, she couldn't blame her. He couldn't blame her. He stopped but held a hand up to her like a traffic cop. Stay put. Tom glanced around briefly, then began to hammer on the door again. This time, hard enough to rattle the glass in an old wooden frame and make his reflection shiver. Last chance, then we're coming in, Clay turned and opened his mouth to tell him that masterful shit wasn't going to cut in. Not today. And then a bald head rose slowly from behind the reception desk. It was like watching periscope surface. Clay recognized that head even before it got to the face. It belonged to the clerk who checked him in yesterday and stamped a validation on his parking lot ticket for the lot a block over. The same clerk who'd given him directions to the Copley Square Hotel this morning. For a moment he still lingered behind the desk, and Clay held up his room key with a green plastic Atlantic Avenue Inn fob hanging down. Then he also held up his portfolio, thinking the clerk might recognize it. Maybe he did. Or more likely he just decided he had no choice in either case. He used the pass-through at the end of the desk and crossed quickly to the door, detouring around the body. Clay Riddle believed he might be witnessing the first reluctant scurry he had ever seen in his life. When the desk clerk reached the other side of the door, he looked from Clay to Tom and then back to Clay again. Although he did not appear particularly reassured by what he saw, he produced a ring of keys from one pocket, flickered rapidly through them, found one and used it on his side of the door. When Tom reached for the handle, the bold clerk held his hand up, much as Clay has held his up at the bloodstained girl behind him. The clerk found a second key and used this one in another lock and opened the door. And by this one, I'm going to stop it here, guys. Thank you very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it, and yeah, catch me in the next one. Take care.